ahead, man. Is that one?
Well, yeah, but like really strong, like really gentle within those lights. It's like,
I'm loving it. It must be the picture. The Department of Education is responsible for children education services from the early years, school levels, higher and further education policy, apprenticeship, wider skills in England, ensuring efficient and effective education services are available to meet the needs of children and the young people. And of course, we got the regulatory bodies like the Ofsted and other government bodies. But the question is there a gap in the education system? I have wonderful guests in the studio, and we're going to look at this topic. My name is Richard Cunningham, and welcome to the program. We're live at Amaze TV, and the phone lines are open. On my right, I have Dr. Elizabeth Negus. She is an educator and a chartered teacher. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And on my left, I have Dr. Alison Taysum, Principal Consultant. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dr. Richard Cunningham.
Bless you. Now, before we go to this topic, is future teachers' leadership. And I believe you have a lot of experience in this topic, and that's what we're going to look in today. And by the way, the phone lines are open. We're also live on social media, so you can send all your engagement, you can send your comments and your feedback. Now, Dr. Elizabeth, if I may come to you,
Yeah.
please tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in this field.
In the field of education.
Of course,
of
yes,
course.
indeed, yes.
Well, I've been in education for approximately 30 years, and I've taught children from 11 plus all the way through, let's see, university level.
Wow.
So over 30 years, I've seen a lot of changes in the curriculum. And one of the things I'm very concerned about is making sure today that our young people have a thorough grasp of education, not just in theory on paper, but being in a position where they are able to work, where they're able to operate on a global scale. And so my major concern is that being at the cutting edge of education, seeing how the world is changing, especially amidst COVID-19, where do our young people lie? And how do we equip them to manage the onslaught of changes in education? So I'm very happy, thrilled to be on with my colleague, Dr. Alison Taysum, because I know right now parents will be watching, other
Absolutely.
educators, and we are there to kind of help and fortify you and support you. Yes, so thank you very much, Richard.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Yes.
It's just good to get that background about
Yeah.
yourself,
Thank
and which
you.
is really fantastic. If I may come to you, Dr. Alison, could you just again tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in this field?
Yes, my name is Dr. Alison Taysum, working at a school in Birmingham. And what I found is that when I started my career about 30 years ago in industry, a lot of people on the line perhaps didn't realise that if they weren't fully engaged in a curriculum that was meaningful and worthwhile to them, that was the job that they would get for life on a factory production line. And those conditions are quite harsh, -1 to +4 degrees C in a food factory, quite loud, so air defenders on,
Yes.
8-hour shifts, 2 20-minute breaks. So I decided when I left there to go into education. I was very interested in developing all young people so that they could become the people they wanted to be. And I was really mindful of how our teachers were equipped as teacher leaders of learning and teaching to do that. So I started to do research into postgraduate research and into ITT. And I discovered that a lot of the teachers were frustrated because the reasons they were going into teaching were not necessarily what they were able to do in the classroom in terms of listening to the children, doing assessment for learning and developing those young people to be the best they could be and develop their capital to become the people they wanted to be. So that's why I'm committed now to this project that we've come on to talk to colleagues and parents about, because we think parental engagement is absolutely essential, that we work in partnership between school communities of all members, and that we start to make links with the quadruple helix, so that people in industry, in the services, across all of our economy can start to make connections with how the education is empowering the young people to take those places in the economy that are perhaps sustainable, but that they have the knowledge, skills, experience and competencies to develop their own careers as they see, that goes beyond maybe 0-hour contracts and begins to give them the opportunity to advocate and engage with politics and with manifestos to say, well, this is the social contract we'd like, and this social contract delivers equity and opportunities for renewal of ways in which our economies work that are embedded in the social and the lives, that people can lead good and happy lives with happy endings. So that's why I'm wanting to do this work.
My goodness, that's really. And you have also mentioned some of the things that we're actually going to discuss, but we don't want to go too fast again. But if I may come to you, Dr. Elizabeth,
Yeah.
you see, before we can identify the possible gaps in the system, in the education system, we have to first find out the current system. Can you give us an overview of the current education system?
Yes, yes. Well, right now, when we compare our education system with other countries around the world, we don't seem to be doing we're not doing very well, and there's a lot. We have this huge gap to fill. So there's a lot of work we need to be that needs to be done with the curriculum, whereby our students become more confident in any subject. They develop fusion skills, that they're able to do the academic stuff, but also just basic long life skills. Now that's missing because throughout our lives we've been taught maths, English and science, the core subjects, and we negate basic life-saving skills like having to balance an account, or having been able to do some domestic work at home, or some gardening, or painting. These things have been sorely neglected. Also in our curriculum, we put a lot of emphasis on reading, whereas in other countries, perhaps like Cuba and Latvia and other Eastern European countries, Hong Kong, for instance, the children start at a very tender age where they develop the speaking skills, and then they go into reading. So you find that in those schools, students are a lot more confident when they stand to debate, to talk with adults or people at varying degrees. The speaking skills, it's something that these countries take very seriously. The reverse is true for us. We put a lot of emphasis on reading. Now, Richard, you asked, Mr. Cunningham, you asked about, what can we do about this? Again, this is why we are here. It's a huge gap to fill. We need to work with parents, and parents need to wake up and take an active part in what's going on in schools. Now, there has been a gap for two reasons.
Before we come to the gap, because you see, what we're trying to identify is we first have to understand, before we realize there's a gap, we have to understand the current system, and that's what we want to address.
Well, that's right. Our current system is a very prescribed method of teaching. So teachers, educators, we have this curriculum, and this curriculum, we all know that we have to look at it and ensure that we complete it. And in some cases, the curriculum it's very regimented, and there's hardly any leeway for changes. All teachers know is that here's this curriculum, and we need to follow it through. And that does not always work, because things changes. And I think teachers and students must be free to be able to speak and modify the curriculum according to the needs of students.
Is that lacking at the moment?
Well, that's the system under which we work. So it is the curriculum is too rigid and it's too prescribed. And that is why you find students, they learn in a very utilitarian way, whereby they kind of accept everything the teacher says, and at exam time they regurgitate it. So that sort of lateral thinking is not there, or the ability to think critically, it's clearly eroded, because students are obedient to what the teacher says.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Thanks.
Now, if I may come across to you, let me hear your views on the current system.
Well, I think we've done education policy analyses as a consortium that's international in 27 countries, the last two being in Iraq and Lebanon. And what we've found is across all these nation states is that we are saying we want young people to learn how to speak and listen, but they're not part of the statutory assessments. So the teachers are really wanting to meet the objectives that they're being given, and they want their children to shine and be the best they can be in their exams. But if those exams are not testing for the quality of speaking and listening, and for the quality of asking good questions of each other and asking good questions to problem solve together, and we're not testing their collaborative abilities to communicate and problem solve together that answers questions, then it's going to fall off the end of the learning and teaching, and the teachers are going to focus on the prescribed, you need to write this as an answer, because that's what's going to get you your ticket to go to university and to get the best job. And then it becomes something that we have in PISA, which is a league table where we see absolutely no correlation between the position in the league table of the PISA, which are the results of English, maths and science, and then the positioning of the country's gross domestic product and gross domestic product per capita. So, for example, China may have 1.7 billion people, but the gross domestic product per capita could be 8 or 9, which is very poor compared to somewhere like Qatar, which is very low on the PISA league tables, but has thousands in GDP per capita. So what we really want to see is how are we aligning what we're testing children that they are capable of doing and that their competencies are there, that equips them and empowers them to take a place in society to really add to gross domestic product per capita, to the wealth of the nation, but also that embeds the economy into their society to empower social cohesion, honouring different cultures of all faiths and none, honouring all people, and really narrowing the black-white achievement gap, which we're seeing as absolutely disgraceful and an abomination to the Lord.
And we're going to come to that as well. But Dr. Elizabeth, what is the policy context of the program?
The policy context of the program, if I may ask Dr. Taysum to answer this question, because she probably has deeper insight into it for our audience.
Got you.
Yes.
Well, when Dr. Negus and I have talked together, I've really benefited from your understandings of the social sciences and social commentaries, from your expertise in literature. My expertise has been more about how does postgraduate research empower teacher leaders and leaders in education systems to teach the children and optimise their learning and their well-being. So I think what I saw was a gap in that it's exciting to do a master's and it's exciting to do doctoral research and to empower people to go on that journey, which is transformative and life-changing. What I wasn't seeing was the collaboration of a master's programme for a school, a doctoral programme for a school. And I really wanted to see, and I think it's coming through with research schools and how that's developing, certainly in the UK and other countries, how we can start to develop whole school approaches to evidence-informed learning and teaching that optimises and connects children with new partnerships in the quadruple helix, so that they can start to say, well, this learning is going to empower me to get this job that I really want, and that learning is something I can achieve and I'm motivated to do it. I don't need extrinsic motivation, I'm intrinsically motivated and I know I can do this, and I've got teachers who believe in me, and I know that together we can get to the results that I need for the job and the life I want, to have a family, to have a school for my children, to have a home, and to have a pension. It's really important to have a pension for long-term life and long living. So I think the research really saw that this project we have, the policy context, is to develop a whole school in collaboration, so that as people develop their evidence-informed leadership in their classrooms that optimises learning, they can then share that with other schools. So we develop an empowering network of professional communities, so that we spread the collaboration and we spread the problem solving and we spread the good communication to empower all children, and rather than see each other as competition for the jobs, see each other that as Christians, we believe that the Lord has provided enough for all of us.
Absolutely.
And therefore, if we work together and we trust in the Lord, there will be enough resources for us all. There will be enough jobs for us all. And we don't need to say, well, I see that person and I don't really want them to do as well teaching their children as me because I want the promotion. They will start to see both of us can be promoted. Both of our teaching and learning can be optimising the students' learning, and both of our classes can be the very best within schools and between schools. And I think that is a kind of a flipping the system in terms of virtuous circles going up and really empowering the I think, very positive regard for each other and for the self.
Yes,
Wow.
and if I may just add to Dr. Taysum's comments, which was so valuable, just in terms of expertise, one of the things that I do know from experience that will really benefit and optimize students and teachers' growth, development, their ideas towards education and being in that position, as you said, where they can get jobs that they're satisfied with. It's the whole idea of my whole background in language and literature.
Yes.
Because literature is just a reflection of any age that the writer happens to find himself in. And if our teachers in this whole project that we are doing can just understand literature and read, I think what's missing, and I see it, and this is what I'm passionate about, is to get the critical skills, the thinking skills, the problem-solving skills, and they can certainly get that through the project we'll be proposing tonight. But literature plays a huge role in developing the mind in such a scientific way, in such an empirical way, in every facet. Dr. Taysum mentioned, the Lord providing for everyone. And you may say that I'm biased towards literature, and perhaps I am, but it certainly gives everyone that opportunity to tap into various fields so that they become wholesome, holistic individuals. Yes.
Fantastic. Now, before we go to the project, which is the key of what we're talking about, now let's step back a little bit, because we have regulators like Ofsted and other government bodies.
Yeah.
Are they missing something here?
I think possibly what would be exciting for Ofsted to do is to keep that rigorous accountability and the regulatory body there, which is so essential. But I wonder whether they could be empowered to, if they are going to fail a lesson or say this needs improvement, to immediately demonstrate an outstanding lesson with the same children and with the same lesson objectives, so that the teachers that they are leaving who feel failures, and the children who feel failures, and perhaps the whole school and community who feel failures, those Ofsted inspectors are empowered to say, this is what you can do to be a success, and I'm going to show you how to do that now, and you can film it, and then we can analyse it afterwards. But I think when you go in and you say this needs improvement and then you leave without showing how to do that better, I think for us as Christians and for all faiths and none, the great teachers, and for us Jesus, the Son of God, Emmanuel, God on earth, came to model the way to be, and would never say, this is what I want you to do, and not show you how to do it. That's why in the Bible it's called Acts, and Jesus was, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. So the intentions are clear, and then Jesus on earth is the embodiment of those intentions through perfect acts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to come in before we look at the project?
Well, just very briefly, I am with the Worshipful Company of Educators, and one of the things we are actively involved in is, of course, what's going on in schools and colleges, and we've had lots of seminars and meetings. One in particular was how do you deliver an outstanding lesson? So I think across the board, educators are aware that there are ways and means of delivering outstanding lessons, and we had demonstrations of this. My only concern is, is that I want teachers, I've observed teachers in different lessons. I've been observed by Ofsted as well.
Yes.
But I think what would make an enormous difference, a significant difference to teaching, is if teachers are allowed that freedom to just be themselves in a classroom. They don't have to change their methods of teaching because Ofsted is coming in. I believe, and I've tested that, if teachers can just, if throughout your career you've been teaching great lessons, you're happy, you're satisfied, you have that calling to see students do well, I think with an if an Ofsted inspector comes in, then you maintain that demeanor, you maintain that style. I think the problem teachers have is when they change and things can really go, get out of sync. But that's my only concern, yes.
Looking at the education system in the UK,
Yes.
compared to other countries, other Eastern European countries,
Yes.
Countries in Africa, what would you say the level of the UK education system is like?
Right, you would like to go first? I'll go
Yes.
second, because we may have very different views on this. So having just, Alison?
Yes. Let me hear your views.
Well, we've done some policy analysis with Professor Hawa Imam from Abuja University, and Hawa is my wonderful Muslim sister and also amazing colleague who has mentored me in the past, and we continue a strong relationship as researching now. What she really found was there was a bit of a difference in gender. I think sometimes there was an attempt to meet the Millennium Goals, but I think there's an issue with the girl child getting to school sometimes. I think there's an issue with sometimes the behaviour expectations are different for girl child and boy children. And I think that when we're looking at empowering children to develop local entrepreneurial economies, if they are developing an English curriculum that may still be very much about colonialism, then that curriculum is not necessarily going to empower those students with the knowledge, skills, experiences and competencies they need to build local, maybe cafe societies, and from that build local entrepreneurial economies that can really be amplified and propelled through professional learning networks, where private schools in Nigeria might become new partners with state schools and really start to spread good practice and raise the standards of education up to lift our children to where they belong. And I think also in Ghana we're seeing a big difference in terms of the rural north and then the maybe more urban south, and encouraging people from the cities to go to rural schools to teach in the villages is something that Mahamadou Idrisu, who is a former PhD student of mine, now a great doctor and very senior leader in the university, what he's done is really try to empower teachers to gain the experience, and if they're going to go on to be leaders of education systems, they need to know what education is like in rural Ghana, and particularly in the north they need to know about issues to do with the Sustainable Development Goals, about water, about sanitary provisions, about food, about how we are empowering people to become farmers and to transport their own goods, rather than maybe some other nations coming in, previously British people, French people, and now maybe Chinese people coming in, and they have the money to invest, but what is happening in terms of the returns on those investments for the investors and for the people who are being invested in, and what kind of returns on investment are there for the African people, and how are they building small and medium enterprises that is building their national wealth, and how is that supporting transparency in governance systems to empower people to have the kind of mitigation that they might need legally. For example, I heard that women find it very difficult to get accommodation in Lagos because they're labelled if they're single women. What can we do to make this more 50-50 gender equity? How can we empower women to be able to work in Lagos if they wish to, and therefore be able to have a home where they're safe, and then they can contribute to the economy and become leaders of the future? But if they can't even rent a home, or they deposit down a bond and it's lost, we're not really empowering our women, and then that is actually going to prevent families from being empowered, and those women going on to teach their children the 5 pillars of Islam, if they're Muslims, or that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth and the life, if they're Christians like I am, or whatever faith or no faith. I think my role that I see as an educator is that God has given me the opportunity to love him and then love all his people, not just love all his Christian people. And if we want peace on earth, then maybe God needs to make the judgments of how people live their lives. What we need to do is empower them to make informed choices about those judgments, so that when they do meet God, which we believe they do, but some people may not, and they're entitled to that view, but when they do come to that point, they will have had a fair chance through an education system to be the best they can be and to meet their Maker at that point, feeling that they have done everything that they could to be obedient to God and to love God and to love their neighbours as themselves.
Absolutely. Now, you've mentioned a couple of things here. You've mentioned the gaps in the education system, let's say in Nigeria, example for single moms. You have mentioned the women empowerment. You've mentioned various faiths, because you see, this can affect the education system. Mm-hmm. Now, on your project, what evidence do you have that the project that you're developing is, let's give an example, the black and white gap of the achievement? How can your project solve these challenges of race?
Well, initially the pilot of the project was published in the Italian Journal of Sociology of Education, and I wrote a paper with Professor Khalid Arar, who is in Texas University, but he's been based in universities in Palestine and in Israel. So what he did with his research is a Palestinian school found that when they started to operationalize these ideas of being more flatter in their relationships, rather than a top-down, the head teacher tells the teachers what to do, the teachers tell the children what to do, there's no talk back. The policymakers tell the head teachers what to do, there's no talk back for the head teachers to the policymakers. Then when they found they had more flatter relationships, the students began to develop more trust with the parents and with the teachers. The teachers had more trust in the students. The learning and teaching became more open. The well-being went up, and we saw that the results went up by up to 27% in terms of the outcomes, and that was after the first year. So we think that we saw these patterns across all the cases that we've had in the Italian Journal of Sociology of Education in the February 2020 edition. It's an open access, open science, open world journal, so anyone can access those. And indeed, the journal was published in 2012, 2014 and 2017, where we did special editions. There's usually 3 or 4 editions a year, but those years had the international policy analyses that we commissioned as our consortium. And all of our policy analyses found the same issues with curriculums, in that they were lacking in the ability of students to deliver on competencies for critical analysis, and a complete lack of opportunity to test for students' ability to critically analyse. So it's very difficult for students and parents who were students to penetrate fake news if they don't know how to critically analyse empirical, ethical or logical arguments, and they don't have the competencies to deconstruct so that they can say, well, I know this is fake news because this is the evidence that I've got, and they know how to look that up with the internet, which is, if we can get everybody to have the internet, and there are things we can do in terms of taking batteries and cameras and screens, and we've literally seen the PowerPoints on 2 sheets between trees if there isn't internet, and we can use memory sticks, so we can download research and give them to people on memory sticks so that they can use, within copyright and data protection, they can use the data if they haven't got internet access. And that is something that I know Horizon 2020, for example, are very interested in. How are we investing in building infrastructure, particularly in Africa, infrastructure for internet, infrastructure for transport, and infrastructure for joining our nations up so that we can really empower and propel entrepreneurial economies to strengthen the voice of Africans in the international arena.
Fantastic. You are watching Amaze TV. We're live. And in case you're just tuning in and you're, in the middle of the program, we would like to welcome all our viewers. We take all your comments, so please join us on Facebook, on Twitter, on the Amaze TV app. We have fantastic guests, and we're talking about future teachers, leadership. And you can see on my right, I have Dr. Elizabeth Negus, educator and charter teacher. And also on my left, I have Dr. Alison Taysum, principal consultant. And we are here to look at this topic. So please join us, do call the line. And of course, you can send your comments on Facebook and all the social media platform at Amaze TV. Thank you so much. Now, if I may come back to you, Dr. Elizabeth.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Alison mentioned a lot of key points. What I want to, because in your experience
Yes.
As a charter teacher, the challenges of race,
Yes.
the challenges of single moms, the challenge of adult students, the challenges of faiths, the different faiths. In your experience, how can we build up, and eradicate some of these challenges of education within this race, faith, culture?
Yes. Very important question.
Yes.
We are living in an age, where we speak a lot about diversity and inclusivity. It's, I think it was 2020 when that act was brought into, force, that there should be in every industry, there should be a degree of diversity and inclusivity. Well, okay, here we are, 30 years plus in teaching, and on one hand, things have got better because we now have easy access and open access to adults who, adult single moms, people from different ethnic backgrounds who now have an opportunity to go to university. Their parents didn't go, and going to university is quite a big thing. So I can say with all honesty that yes, I can walk into a classroom and I can see that, hold on, this is not the Victorian period. I'm here in the 21st century, and I've got a range of students in front of me with different faiths, colors, backgrounds. Yes. And of course, I've taught on the access course for many years. I've taught, mentored university students, and I can see again some of them in their 30s, 40s, 50s, going to universities. So that I can say that we've made great progress, stringent strides in ensuring that everyone has access to education. The problem is, and you asked just before we went on the break, you did ask Dr. Taysum about the black-white divide.
That's right.
From my experience and observation, I still see a chasm between the blacks and the whites. And when I say blacks, I mean ethnic minorities and Caucasians. If you, I see, and again, I'm speaking from experience and personal observations, that if you look at the universities, especially the Ivy League universities, the Russell Group universities, I tend to see we have more Caucasians, getting entry. And one reason could perhaps is the money. We get a lot of students from abroad. In fact, Durham was one case in point a few years ago. You get lots of students coming from abroad to go to Durham University, and the majority of them were Caucasians. And I saw very few black students at Durham the time I was there, and that was about 3-4 years ago. Of course, there are other universities that if you look at the universities that used to be polytechnics before, like East London University. It has a campus in Stratford, one in, I think, Holloway. But those universities that used to be polytechnics, you find a far higher number of ethnic minorities going there. And again, I can say this does not just happen at university level. If you look at the different state schools, independent schools, I can think of a couple of independent schools that I have been to and have first-hand experience of it. And again, when you look at the ratio between blacks and whites,
that's right,
you have more Caucasians. Part of it is, a lot of these children, my research shows that their parents have gone to, great universities, and they understand, the importance of having a good education, and that's just been passed down to the children. With a lot of ethnic minorities, you mentioned single parents.
That's right.
They have to work. And so they're not always there. That's just common knowledge. They're not always there to support their children. And for most part, by and large, they are reliant on the school to be the parent, to be the nurse, to be the educator for that child. So the social class, I'm afraid, still plays still has that effect on how many students get through, to get top jobs and go to top universities, and those that do not. So we are looking at the social class.
Yes.
Of course, if I may just add one other thing, I, just recently researching and writing a paper on how things are changing, how world events are changing education, and we hope that the book is now it's in production stage. We hope that it will be published in the next month or two.
Fantastic.
It's just another book, how world events are changing, and I can't take much credit for it. I have to give the credit to Dr. Professor Rosemary Sage.
Yes.
I'm just a contributor to it. In any event, one thing I have noticed is that the students who are, because of the limitations in flights and COVID-19, only few students are traveling to UK universities, and the majority of those students who are traveling are Caucasian. So here we have the COVID-19 giving a double setback to the black community. So already when you look at the ratio, I talked about that great divide.
Yes.
COVID-19 has not made it easier for them. Again, the areas in which the demography has another impacts again. So
fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
We'll come to the COVID-19 because we're running out of time.
Yes.
Now, I want to give Dr. Taysum to really. I want the viewers to get the details and the project that you're setting. So I want you to really elaborate the project that you're running. I want you also to run through the ABCDE, all of that so that the viewers can have a full understanding of the project that you're running. Please.
So the project is international, with an international consortium. It's empowering young societal innovators for equity and renewal, and the acronym is EASIER. And EASIER is something that is about the young people connecting with the sustainable development goals that align to commercial interests. And together, those can propel entrepreneurial economies, as I said earlier, and develop gross domestic product. And it's essentially through a blueprint for character development for evolution. So when we look at the characteristics of an inclusive education system, we can start to define what is inclusive. We can start to define what is unconscious bias. And then we can start to recognize where unconscious bias exists and eradicate it to narrow the black-white achievement gap. So A is about being able to ask good questions. And if you think about it in a classroom, when do children and students get an opportunity to ask questions? They're asked to be quiet. They're asked to do the task. They're asked to get on with it because the teachers are under a lot of pressure to make sure they pass the tests. So the opportunity to ask questions and even formulate questions is not always there. And if at home the children are not necessarily empowered by parents who as Dr. Negus says, aren't always there because they've got 3 jobs to make rent, or they're on 0-hour contracts and insecure in terms of even being able to find food. We have food banks in this country, many, many food banks. So with this asking questions, we need to even get these children to formulate how to ask a question, and then to find out what they want to ask questions about, what is important to them. And then B is about, well, how do I find out what we already know? What's the best that's been thought and said about that? Now, as Christians, we would go to the scripture and we would say, well, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus say? But whatever your faith or no faith, you can go to your holy texts or your philosophies or the Declaration of Human Rights, taking a humanistic approach, and you can find out, well, what did people do that really worked in the past? And we've had about 2,000 years, and less than 400 years have been peaceful. There've been war all the time. So we have got a lot to learn from when there was peace. What was going on? What were the conditions? What were the characteristics? So C is about developing methods that the young people can test out in the classroom to find out, well, this is what the literature says works. Let's find out what's happening in our context. And then when they move to D, they develop theories of change that they can test out, which is really important with grassroots up, participatory community projects that begin to address sustainable development goals. How can we eradicate poverty together in collaboration? So how are we developing theories of change in our school systems that motivate young people intrinsically so they want to learn, and that they can see how their learning is going to empower them to get the job they want, and that's realistic and real world. And that they can get that, and they can see the key performance indicators of what I need to get, the grades I need to get, and it's mapped out for them as a roadmap. So this roadmap to them getting the job they want is about their individual interests that align with the interests of the community in a social contract. So what do all the neighbours want that does no harm to the self and the other, where we can all come together of all faiths and none and have community cohesion? So that's the final step, which is E. What are the principles when these things work, when we've got strategies, knowledge to action strategies that work? What are the key principles that we can take and apply to other areas in our life? So A, B, C, D, E, teachers need to know how to use that, teacher leaders need to know how to use that, and then they can bring that to the classroom. And those are the kinds of tools that empower innovation, creativity. And remember, we read in the Bible that the angels sing to the Lord all the time. So music is really important. It must resonate in the soul, in the body, and bring peace and love and happiness. So where is the music in the curriculum? If it's played for the praise of God, give God the glory all the time. Something to think about.
2 things. Your target audience.
Yes.
And so I wanted to answer two things at the same time. If you can just elaborate on the target audience. Also, is it a sustainable franchise?
Well, that's the very, very good question.
Yes.
Dr. Elizabeth and I would be the facilitators of the learning and teaching. We have associate tutors. Now, the idea is that we would have 10 to 15 people from a school that would meet with us every week for 2 hours a week. There's a free, massive online open access course. So you could do this without our support. It's totally free.
Yeah.
The whole course is available for you. But what we've found is that people need support in asking questions. And the work we've done has been about enabling, listening to people, and almost as a midwife, enabling them to ask their own questions and find their own answers. So that guide, that experience we've had in developing PhD students, master's students, is what we would bring to the 15 people who are on the course. And then the idea is that once they have got what we call the ISEA Charter mark, which is at bronze, silver or gold level, they can apply to become a tutor themselves. So we would mentor them to become a tutor. So it's a franchise system where they then start to teach another 15 people in another school. And then those people can be mentored to become an associate tutor. So it builds in that way. And you can have maybe 4 schools initially with 15 in each school, and then they network together, and then those 4 schools would build out with another 4 schools. So Dr. Elizabeth and I would be the people who would mentor and assure the quality, but the idea is that we would then hand over when the quality is assured by the internal team, possibly in partnership with the university, that they would then control the quality and they would control the income, so that the income is coming to the university, and it's a way of empowering those nation states to build their own curriculums that's culturally relevant, and then they are the ones in control.
Yeah, it is. If I may just say, just to add something else, the whole idea is to empower teachers. Yes. I think that, Mr. Cunningham mentioned there are huge gaps, and I have worked with teachers. I've observed teachers in lessons. We work with PhD students, and all sorts. There is that gap, and I think we've reached a critical stage where we no longer have to talk about things and make it very theoretical and make it look very attractive on paper. There is a great need to empower teachers to bridge that gap, because if we're not careful, it's getting wider and wider, and it's already wide, and it's a mammoth task that educators like Alison, Dr. Taysum, and myself and other educators have at their hands. So we need today is a great opportunity for everyone viewing this to understand that what we have ahead of us is very, very important, and we hope to see major changes in education, bridging that gap, empowering teachers, and as you so succinctly put it, Dr. Taysum, enabling them to empower other teachers afterwards. Yes. Yeah.
Now, I'm a Christian. I'm trained as a chaplain. You are also a born again Christian. You are also singing the choir, I believe. Yes, indeed. Now, this project, how do you think this, as we Christian, yes, you also as a Christian, yeah, how does this project serve God in the sense of serving the people in a secular world that operates within the secular social contracts?
Well, I think Luke 10:27 tells us that, we must love the Lord your God with all your strength, all your heart, all your mind, and love your neighbour as yourself. And the rest of the laws hang on those two. So I think we are serving God, being obedient to God by delivering this Isaiah project in terms of empowering young societal innovators for equity and renewal of all faiths and none, and giving them the critical thinking tools to make informed choices about what faith or no faith they wish to take up, but also how they can empower themselves to build their entrepreneurial economies and to be farmers, to grow their food safely in the fields, to harvest that safely, to bring that home and nurture their families together and build economies on that where there is no exploitation, where they get the full rewards for those crops. And I think that's absolutely crucial for equity and renewal and what God has planned for us.
Again, as Christians, I can't pick up a text of any description without seeing the hand of God in it. When it comes to literature, then everything Shakespeare has lots of references to Christianity. You look at any text, and the scriptures in many cases have been quoted. So even in teaching students or tutoring or mentoring, we as educators have that grand opportunity to bring in that, use it as a way of teaching them about God, showing them the love we have. And I do believe that when a job is done with love, it will be done properly and effectively, and the end result will be achieved.
Yes, indeed. Now, we have a lot to talk about, and I just hope that we can come back again next time and update the viewers. COVID-19 has halted a lot of, this education system down.
Yes.
But I believe we can come back again the next time and just give the viewers a more thorough update to all of this program. Now, the website that the viewers need to go and log on to, what's the website?
It's AlisonTaysum.com.
And Alison, AILISONTAYSUM.com. Yes, so go to the website and get all information. Now, I want to give you the opportunity, because there's a lot that we are, time is not on our side. But what we want to do is to just give us your final thought. And Dr. Elizabeth, also, I want to come back to you and also to give us a final thought. Now, I know both of you are also authors. So we're going to look at the books because I believe one of your books been forwarded by Prince Charles.
Yes, and again, that was Paradoxes in Education, Learning in a Plural Society, and Prince Philip.
Yes.
Prince Philip endorsed it. So again, I'm a contributor to it. I give all the, I thank Dr. Professor Rosemary Sage for writing this book and trusting me to contribute to it. So I thank her very much for that.
And once again, the title of the book again is?
The title of the book is Paradoxes in Education, Learning in a Plural Society, which is what we are right now.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, if I may come to you, Dr. Taysum, just give us your final thought and really summarize about the project. And again, just give us your final thought and also about your book, please.
I think my final thought is really 1 Corinthians 13:4, which is a definition of love. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonour others, and it is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. And we know that the truth, John 14:16, is Jesus Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life for Christians and people of all faiths and none. That the truth is about humanitarianism and I think not dishonouring each other. And that means anything that has any racism or anything to do with the black-white achievement gap is dishonouring others, which is an abomination to the Lord. And Isaiah Chartermark is about looking at equity, empowering young societal innovators for equity and renewal to honour themselves, honour each other, if they are of a faith to honour God, honour their neighbours. And I think most importantly, to be able to live a good life with a happy ending and have that opportunity to do that rather than live in a system that oppresses them, makes them feel failures. And the Isaiah Chartermark is about flipping the system, empowering people, and about really looking at how do we understand love and how do we have that in our lives, and if it's not there, how do we create it?
Fantastic. Dr. Negus, give us your final thought, please.
Well, to God be the glory, great things He
Amen.
has done.
Amen.
And it's been a real honor and privilege to be on this set, sharing my thoughts, ideas, and attitudes towards education. But as a final thought, I really want parents to work very, very closely with teachers and the community. I think the Bible says a threefold cord cannot be broken. So if we understand and renew our mindset and keep in excellent communication with teachers, parents will learn. I don't want parents being in the dark and just leaving everything up to the schools, because the schools are under tremendous pressure and the curriculum is just packed with so much. And I spoke about all the bridges that we have to, the gaps we have to bridge. So what I'm asking parents and schools and anyone out there listening, we need to really, really communicate closely for the benefit of this generation coming up. Because if we miss it this year, this time around, they will suffer, and we don't want that. That's my final thoughts, yes.
Fantastic. Now, before we go, I want to come back to you. Just, if you have a word for a parent watching, now it could be a single parent, it could be, a complete family. What word would you want to say to a parent watching now regarding the project that you're running?
The project is really about, we know that God has already ordained everything that's going to happen. So if you are struggling, give it to God. you know that he has promised that you will be covered with the blood of the Lamb and that you will be saved. And if you are of no faith or another faith, you can give it to your God, or you can understand and give it to a humanitarian social contract. But it's absolutely crucial that you trust God. And so I think it's really about love. Love yourself, love each other, love God, and just love.
Fantastic. We have run out of time, viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'd like to thank both of my guests for spending that time to really elaborate on this project. And I trust that you'll come back again to just give us an update on the entire project, because we know that by the grace of God, this COVID-19 will pass. My pastor always says it will pass. And I believe that word has encouraged you, the viewer. So I pray that you will tune in again when we come back again to give you further updates. So Dr. Elizabeth Negus, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Alison Taysum.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Please say goodbye to our viewers.
Thank you, viewers. Thanks for listening. We look forward to being with you again.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Until next time, God bless you.
God bless.
God bless.
Bye.